Watch out, them ones.
I bet y'all get more views than you. Let's
Man, go.
All right. What you want though?
I got 5 already. I got 14 already.
That's a lie.
I swear to God. What you want to do?
Gee, after we see baseball, we're going to see the football.
I'm at 37. I'm at 40, bro. What's up?
The Houston skyline shimmered faintly under a curtain of mist. It was just past 9 p.m. when the call came in. First responders arrived at the apartment complex. Nothing seemed out of place at first. No forced entry, no screaming, just silence. Until they opened the door. Kyren Lacy, 24 years old, former LSU wide receiver, a young man once destined for Sunday night football, was found motionless on the floor. Cold. Gone. The world had just lost another name too young, too soon. But this wasn't just the story of a tragic death. It was the culmination of a series of choices, a timeline that twisted through fame, heartbreak, guilt, and, ultimately, silence. It began years earlier, in a town called Thibodaux, Louisiana. Kyren was a kid then, quiet, fast, fearless. On the field, he was poetry. Off the field, he was a mystery. Coaches said he trained like a veteran. Friends said he had a heart too big for his chest. He wasn't born into privilege. He fought for every yard, every scout's attention, every handshake that said, "You've got what it takes." By 2021, he'd made it to LSU, the Tigers, the pride of the South. He didn't just play wide receiver, he dominated. In his final season, Kyren racked up 866 yards and 9 touchdowns. Draft boards lit up. ESPN called him a dark horse. Mel Kiper Jr. ranked him as the number 6 wide receiver prospect in the nation. For Kyren, the NFL wasn't a dream anymore, it was an inevitability. But real life doesn't play by the rules of highlight reels. On December 17th, 2024, everything changed.
6 o'clock, weeks after a crash that left one person dead, 2 others injured in Lafourche Parish, a former LSU football player is facing charges.
State police issuing a warrant for the arrest of Kyren Lacy, saying his reckless driving led to that deadly crash. News 2's Brittany Weiss with new details tonight.
Former LSU wide receiver Kyren Lacy is accused of negligent homicide and hit and run for his involvement in the death of a 78-year-old man. Louisiana State Police are heading up the investigation and say Lacy was driving recklessly along LA 20 near Perez Lane in Thibodaux on December 17th around lunchtime. State Police say Lacy passed multiple vehicles at a high speed, at one point crossing the center line and entering the northbound lane while in a no-passing zone. Drivers in the northbound lane tried to swerve out of the way, causing a head-on collision that took the life of Herman Hall of Thibodaux. Investigators say Lacy went around the crash scene and drove off without stopping or reporting his involvement. 2 days after the accident, Lacy posted on social media a thank you to LSU and announced he'd be declaring for the 2025 NFL Draft. Hall's daughter, Heather Hall Dickerson, spoke with WBRZ and says her dad, a Marine, would have wanted justice. Just days after the crash, Dickerson said she asked state police for a crash report, but one still hadn't been finalized. She says she was told the suspect was a high-profile person and they'd be taking their time with the case.
That morning started like any other. Clear skies, cool air. Kyren got into his 2023 Dodge Charger. Black, loud, aggressive, just like the game he played. He took to Louisiana Highway 20. A stretch of road where time feels like it slows down, surrounded by woods and farmland. But Kyren didn't slow down. According to police reports, he was driving erratically, crossing the center line, passing multiple vehicles in a no-passing zone, pushing speed like he was chasing a touchdown that didn't exist. Up ahead, a pickup truck swerved to avoid the oncoming Charger. Behind that pickup, a Kia Cadenza panicked and veered left. It crossed into the southbound lane and met a 2017 Kia Sorento head-on. The collision was devastating. Inside the Sorento was 78-year-old Herman Hall, a father, a grandfather, a retired pipe fitter who spent his weekends teaching his grandkids how to fish. Herman was airlifted to a nearby hospital. He didn't make it. And Kyren? According to police, he drove around the scene. No call to 911, no attempt to check on the victims, no brake lights, nothing. He vanished. For weeks, the world didn't know what happened. LSU stayed quiet. Kyren didn't play in the Texas Bowl. 2 days after the crash, just 48 hours after a man died, Kyren declared for the NFL draft. The media started asking questions. Fans grew suspicious. But Kyren said nothing. Not a tweet, not a post, not a whisper. Then, on January 12th, he turned himself in, charged with negligent homicide, felony hit and run.
LSU wide receiver Kyren Lacy turned himself in on charges related to a hit and run that killed a man. Lacy declared for the draft after graduating in December. Now, he could be charged with negligent homicide. Good evening and thanks so much for watching. I'm Whitney Miller. Lacy bonded out of jail less than 2 hours after turning himself in. We were the only news outlet there as he arrived at the Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Office. You can see him enter the building and speak with several state troopers, then get led to the back. The crash happened last month in Chack Bay. State police say a Dodge Charger was driving southbound on Highway 20. The driver sped up and crossed into the northbound side to pass multiple cars in front of them, even though it was a no passing lane. A car in the northbound lane stopped to avoid being hit, which caused the car behind them to swerve and hit another vehicle head-on. The Charger sped off, and 3 people from 2 of those cars were taken to the hospital. One 78-year-old man, Herman Hall, died not long after. Investigators identified the Charger as belonging to Kyren Lacy. State police issued an arrest warrant for him, and tonight he turned himself in. Authorities tell us he faces charges of negligent homicide, felony hit and run, and reckless operation.
Reckless operation of a vehicle. His bond was set at $151,000. He paid, he walked out. And for a moment, it looked like the story might fade, but it didn't. On March 27th, at LSU Pro Day, Kyren showed up. Eyes on him. Cameras everywhere. He ran his routes, showed off his footwork, smiled like a man untouched by the weight of what had happened. But behind that smile, people close to him say he wasn't okay. They said he wasn't sleeping, that he kept a notebook full of prayers, that he'd stare at his phone for hours and never text anyone back, that he didn't go out, didn't celebrate, didn't talk about the draft anymore. He was still running routes, but not toward the NFL. He was running from something heavier. Then came April 6th. A grand jury was scheduled to hear evidence against him the next day. That night, Kyren was alone. Some say he'd spoken to his attorney. Some say he'd called his mom. But what we know for sure is that by the time anyone knocked on his door, it was too late. No cause of death has been confirmed. No final statements. Just a silent room, a stilled body, and an entire life cut short. What's left are questions. Thousands of them. Was it guilt? Was it fear? Did he believe he wouldn't survive prison? Or did the weight of being both hero and villain simply break him? His lawyer insists Kyren wasn't guilty, that the investigation was flawed, that the grand jury would have declined to press charges. But we'll never know what Kyren believed. We'll never hear him explain. The chance for redemption died with him. In Thibodaux, a mother wakes up every morning hoping this was all a dream. His high school coach still keeps his jersey folded in his office. And somewhere, Herman Hall's family watches all this unfold, still grieving their own unimaginable loss. This isn't a story about football. It's a story about moments, about how a single second, a single decision can set fire to everything you've built. It's a story about silence, about how pain untreated becomes pain unspoken, and how sometimes even the strongest athletes are quietly breaking underneath the pads and praise. You may not have known Kyren Lacy before today, but now you do. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't a saint. He was a young man who ran too fast, lived too hard, and carried something inside him that finally became too heavy to hold. And now, there are two families torn apart by a night no one saw coming. So what do we do with this story? We listen. We listen when people say they're tired. We listen when they say they can't breathe. We stop pretending athletes are invincible just because they can leap 40 inches into the air. We remember Kyren, not just as a wide receiver, but as a warning, a reminder, a life that mattered, even in its mistakes. Don't let this story disappear in the algorithm. Share it. Talk about it. Learn from it. Because the next Kyren, he's out there. He's smiling for the cameras. He's signing autographs. And maybe, just maybe, he's dying on the inside. Let's catch him before he disappears too.